Are you here by chance? I don't think so. Let's talk about it. Whoa. Ah, first time for everything. Tonight I'm going to be sharing how I came to be. Just some stories about my ancestors and how I believe that how I came to be is a blessing. It has a little bit of what seems to be fortune and seems to be just things happening by chance, which I don't believe in, and everything kind of working together in this delicate fabric. So, my grandmother on my mom's side comes from a long lineage of very interesting situations that have been ridiculously heartbreaking. My grandmother is the third or fourth generation of woman who had a man be with them when they got married, then leave them, and then when that mother got married again, and the eldest daughter was from the first marriage, that young girl, like my grandmother and her mother and my mother, within those at least 3 generations, each of those generations had to deal with a stepfather and stepchildren that were just awful. Just awful. So my grandmother came from at least 2 generations of that beforehand, and my mom the same. But my grandmother in particular was an interesting story. She sadly had polio growing up. And with her struggle with polio when she was very young, one leg was shorter than the other. So she fell behind in many ways, and she had a lot of housework to do. She was taking care of her step siblings as well. And when she was around 10 or 12 years old, she ended up, when she was 10 or 12 years old, she was near the water. There were these creeks in Guyana, and she was near the water, and she went to go, I don't know if she was washing something or what exactly she was doing, but from what I understand from my grand uncles and other people, she fell in the water, and she did not know how to swim, and she thrashed around, and she tried to keep her head above water. Again, she was not taught as a young person how to swim, and she was just down for the count, pretty much. And supposedly, downstream, a man had actually pulled her out of the water. I assume done some form of CPR because there was a large crowd around her, or at least somewhat of a crowd around her. And they never knew who that person was who saved her, but that she was alive. So, you know, between polio, my grandmother almost dying at the age of 12, and then getting into it with a not so wonderful character who was her husband, and then inevitably that man leaving her, and then marrying someone 22 years older than her, there was a lot that was going against my grandmother and my mom at that time for me to come along. Now, my grandfather, I didn't know too much about because he left my biological grandfather, but I know that he had horrible heart trouble, and he was also a pretty nasty alcoholic. And he was, I think, a bit older than my grandmother too when they got married. And so even he was a person who, if things didn't work out the right way, he would have died. So as of right now, what I've shared is 2 out of 2 grandparents that should have met a early, untimely fate. Now, I don't know too much about my grandfather because, like I said, he went out and skipped town On my mom would just see him randomly from time to time, and from the little that I understand, he might have tried to make himself known, but again, he died early due to his addictions and his heart. So on my dad's side, which was 3 or 4 thousand kilometers away, my grandmother is in a very affluent family in Germany, and my grandfather, I think, from what I understand, or sorry, my great grandfather, from what I understand, in Germany, was the mayor of Frankfurt at one time. They owned massive, uh, this massive music company, brass company, and during the World War II time frame, they had actually housed some of the people who were going to endure a Holocaust, which they didn't understand at the time, the Jewish community, and my uncle, had a bit of a Jewish look to him. He was pretty much immediately ostracized. I think he was in the army, the German army at the time. And so there was a lot of problems that were going on. When they found out that there was a sympathetic, I guess, heart towards the Jewish community, my grandmother was in a work camp. She starved. From what I understand, one of her siblings ended up passing away. I don't know if it was in the work camp or not, but my grandmother definitely lived a life that was always on the edge. At one point, from what I understand, there was even not a deep connection to Hitler, but there was political affiliations when he first started off before he went off the deep end. And so you can imagine when you don't become sympathetic and you have some form of affiliation to an oppressive regime, things can go very bad for you very quickly. So that was, when I was hearing these stories when I was younger, I didn't really pay attention to them. But now, as I think about life, I think about my own kids. I think about the way life works and the beauty, the delicacy, the delicateness of our world, and the quote unquote serendipity of our world. It really, I understand why people really struggle with if they feel that they're created or not, and or if they feel like this world is not only a world of chance, but there's this like beautiful inner workings to the delicacy that I keep saying delicacy, to the delicacy of the world that we live in, and people don't want to kind of muddle it up with a creator or God. But I'm not done yet. I'll get to that in a second. So I think the most crazy of all the stories is my grandfather, because when he was born, and my grandparents all lived to a very old age, which I'll get to in a second, but my grandfather, he was in Scotland at the time, and because of his asthma, he was born in 1920. And because of his asthma, he was not allowed to fight in the war. He was not allowed to do pretty much anything in the war because he was just considered sickly, and he was considered someone who was going to just croak and die at a young age because he was just such a sickly young man. His situation was very interesting, as when World War II, or just before World War II, or around World War II when it broke out, he at 2 different times was at home with his mother, and the first time there were, from what we understand, German bombers who were bombing, the northern part of England, which was Scotland. And the first time around, they were able to make it out to their makeshift shelter, but the bombers blew up the barnyard in which they were actually working in when they heard, the sirens go off, or they heard the planes. I can't remember exactly. My grandfather's passed away a few years ago, and I haven't had a chance to speak with him on these things. His mind wasn't in the right place. But, for him to have ensured a first bombing and be able to survive would have been one thing. But supposedly a couple months later, as they were living in their home, there was another air raid. And I don't know, again, if he heard the sound of the airplanes, or if he if there was like some form of noise or some form of alarm that went off. But those bombers ended up blowing up his home too, which he again then was residing in at the time. And then as he was able to become a boat maker in the English army as time progressed, he had some very crazy machinery accidents and problems that would have ended his life. So in all of these situations, uh, you know, them not being here in this world would have inevitably led to my parents not being here, and then myself not being here. And just the delicacy of how just everything is so featherweight. It feels like we're just these quote unquote meat sacks flying through space, and just about anything can wipe us out. It's incredible that we as humans have got here thus far. And that's why I believe there is a lovely eternal creator that keeps everything intact, that knows what's going on, and that allows for us to exist and for us to supernaturally have these relationships and situations and things happen for God's good and for our best. Now, what also is interesting is that pretty much 3 out of my 4 grandparents, sorry, I should say 2 out of my 4 grandparents, no, that's originally what I was going to say, is 3 out of my 4 grandparents were supposed to die young. Well, one of my grandfather, my biological grandfather, which my mom didn't really know, he died at a young age. However, my grandmother on my dad's side, who was a richer young lady, and again she survived the work camps, but she had a lot of trauma and turmoil to go through. She ended up living to 97. My grandmother, who had polio, who was always sickly and who lived an extremely rough life, she lived to 91. And my grandfather, who was supposed to die pretty much every time he went to the doctor, he lived to 102 years old with a lot of ailments. Again, he was not fit to fight in a war where they were throwing bodies at the German army. So that means that he was not in good shape at all, and yet he surpassed most people in just such a miraculous way. And so, in many ways, it's not really how the story starts, it's how the story ends, and, who ends up, being able to write some or a lot of their story. I've said to people over the years that at some point or another, I truly believe that everyone on the planet is either related to each other, or your grandma or your grandfather threw a spear or tried to shoot a dart or an arrow at my grandma or grandfather. It's just human beings have been in conflict, in war, in near-death experiences since the dawn of time, since Cain killed Abel. And so, we do have this very unique set of parameters on this planet called Earth, and I think it's just remarkable that we've survived this long. And for me, in exploring all the different religions and belief systems, going through agnosticism and atheism, I just could not get over how delicate our world was. I keep saying the word delicate, and I actually keep messing it up with the word delicacy. I don't know, maybe I've got cannibalism on my mind for some reason. But it's just so unbelievably amazing that we have been able to quote unquote make it this far. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. I just couldn't believe that we as a human race did not have a designer in the background going. And on nights where I don't have too much to talk about in the day, I'm going to talk about my life and how everything kind of planned out and how it came to be and how I saw God working in my life. I've always wanted to do this, actually. I had a TV show set up called The Lost, The Life of Stephen Tocher, and I've just gone through a lot of things in life, and I just want to share hope with people because God has taken me through so much over the past 4 decades, and I'm hoping with my genetics, and if God allows, to bless the world for many decades to come and be there for my family. So if you're struggling tonight and you're wondering, were you created? I would say straight off, the bat, that you are, at least, even if you don't believe in God, that you are very special. You have made it this far in human history. There has been a lot working against you for you to be born, for you to survive, for so many things to have worked themselves out negatively for you to not be here. So, take that to heart. You are a super blessing just listening to this right now. If you're in a situation where you feel like, yeah, there is a designer, there is a God, but you don't feel special, same thing applies. You are wonderfully and crafted, you're wonderfully crafted and made in God's image, and God loves you very, very much. You are a blessing. Never ever forget that. And I think if people actually took the time to talk to their grandparents, or they knew some of their lineage or their background, I think people would be a lot more stunned at how they are here today. But a lot of people are too scared because they don't want to give up their own pride. They don't want to give up their own sense of accomplishment. They don't want to know that their ancestors, were cannibals. Again, here with the cannibal thing. Or they were, criminals, or they created war crimes, or, they would just chalk it up to the human race and how we've shifted and evolved more in our morality. But let me tell you, I go back to that one time frame when during COVID, when everyone was pretty much fist fighting for toilet paper. We are not very civilized. People think we are, but we are definitely not very civilized. So as I land the plane, as I pull the car into the garage here, I just want to recap by saying that you are fearfully and wonderfully created. And if you have any questions about life, or about what is going on in our world, or if you want to talk about the generations and how we came to be, the science behind that, I have many lovely scientific minds that I can always call upon to answer these questions. And I just want you to know that there's a lovely community that is here, and I'd love to share more as y'all ask questions. And I haven't missed, over the past 15 years, at least on this channel, I have not missed one comment yet. So if you do want to comment, I will definitely get back to you as soon as possible. Yeah, please just drop a comment or a question below if you like. I just want to leave that open opportunity and an invitation clearly as many times as possible, because I want to help as many people as possible, God willing, of course. If you'd like to check out any of their videos in my dad doing dishes, or my dad doing anything, for all I know, who knows, it'll shift, the playlist is right here. If you'd like to like or subscribe, that'd be super helpful. You can do that right here. I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day, evening, morning, or night. God bless. You are special.